Welcome everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer. We're going to be exploring a short but honestly incredibly fascinating entry from the Notes on Gardening series. We're looking at a recent post by an author named Ang, and it basically documents this total emotional roller coaster involving a seemingly ordinary potted plant. We're going to unpack its unbelievable resilience, the really unexpected frustrations that come with it, and eventually a brilliant spark of creative potential, all centered around the Singapore daisy. So get comfortable and let's get started.
Okay, let's dive into this. What happens when a plant is actually too resilient for its own good? You know, in the gardening world, we spend so much time sweating over fragile plants, right? We coddle them, we carefully measure out fertilizer, we try to shield them from the harsh elements. We usually think of survival and extreme hardiness as the ultimate goal. But, as we're going to see in today's explainer, that extreme resilience, it can totally be a double-edged sword. Sometimes a plant's sheer will to live can turn it from a beloved garden addition into an absolute exhausting chore.
Section 1. Surviving the Tropical Heatwave, the Miraculous Recovery of a Potted Plant.
So before we get into the actual story, let's establish exactly what we are dealing with here. The Singapore daisy, or if we're being formal with the scientific name, Sphagneticola-trilobata. Just grounding ourselves in the biology for a second, this species is practically wearing biological armor. As Ang notes, it is famous for its extreme hardiness. I mean, it literally laughs in the face of pests, and it's perfectly adapted to survive some of the most brutal tropical weather you could possibly imagine. It is, by all definitions, a true survivor.
Now this is where the story gets really intense. Ang describes this brutal tropical heat wave that lasted for weeks. Just imagine the relentless, blazing sun baking down on this poor little potted Singapore daisy. Naturally, that heat wave took its toll, and it caused the plant to completely wilt. It looked done for. So we reach this critical moment. The author assumes the worst and just chops off all the dried, seemingly dead stems. But here is the amazing part. Over the next few days, they simply continue to water the bare pot. And literally, days later, no way. The plant miraculously sprouts brand new leaves. From what looked like certain death to a sudden, vibrant resurrection. It's an incredible testament to the survival instincts of this specific species.
Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds. The annoyance of constant pruning, the hidden cost of resilience.
The author writes, "Still, I'm not really a fan of the species, regardless of the plant's resilience. I absolutely love the blunt honesty here. It's kind of hilarious, right? Here you have this plant that literally just came back from the dead, fighting through a historic heat wave, completely defying all the odds, and the gardener basically looks at it and says, yeah, I still don't like you." It highlights this really fascinating disconnect between a plant's biological success and a gardener's aesthetic patience. So why all the disdain?
Well, this brilliantly illustrates the gardener's dilemma. Step 1, if you want this plant to actually look good and continuously bloom, you have to constantly prune it. It requires active, exhausting maintenance. Step 2, because you are constantly hacking away at it, the plant reacts. It starts developing these incredibly thick woody stems. And then step 3, those thick stems ultimately lead to very rigid, stiff foliage. What starts out as this simple desire for some pretty flowers turns into an endless cycle of maintenance that entirely changes the physical structure of the plant into something stiff, woody, and just completely unwieldy.
Section 3. A surprising bonsai potential, the creative pivot.
This got me thinking. Now, what's really interesting about this is the shift in perspective it represents. The author's standing there, looking at the stiff, woody, fiercely stubborn plant, and instead of just tossing it into the compost bin in defeat, they pause. They look at the exact traits that were driving them crazy, and boom, a light bulb goes off.
Which brings us to the climax of our source material. Can we train this plant as a bonsai instead? So the absolutely crucial point is this. Ang realized that the very things making the Singapore daisy an annoying potted flower, the thick woody stems and that rigid foliage caused by all the constant pruning, those are actually the exact characteristics you want in a bonsai. Bonsai literally relies on a plant's ability to tolerate heavy pruning and develop thick, miniature trunk-like stems. By completely changing their perspective, the gardener took a frustrating high-maintenance weed and hypothesized a brilliant artistic new life for it. They turned a bug, quite literally, into a feature.
As we wrap up today's explainer, I really want to leave you with this question. Do you have a resilient, frustrating plant in your life that might just need a creative reimagining? Or, perhaps, taking this beyond the garden for a second, is there a stubborn problem you're facing right now where the frustrating traits could actually be an unrecognized asset? because sometimes understanding a complex or irritating subject isn't about changing the subject itself, it's simply about shifting the lens through which we view it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and keep exploring those new perspectives.